All right, good evening. Let's call the public hearing to order. And I have an opening statement for the public hearing. This council meeting is being convened in order to hold public hearings on land use matters. Anyone who believes their interest in property is affected by the agenda items may speak or present written submissions to council. Everyone will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one should feel discouraged from making their views known. By order of the provincial health officer, members of the public are not permitted to physically attend public hearings. As an alternative, the public has had the opportunity to provide written comments or participate in this hearing remotely by electronic means or telephone. Those of you who have registered with the clerk should, after being recognized by the chair, begin by clearly stating your name and your address. If you have also provided a written submission, please make this known at the beginning of your presentation. All written submissions will be retained by the clerk and will form part of the record of the hearing. Each speaker may address the hearing a maximum of twice. The length of your first presentation will be limited to a maximum of 10 minutes. Your comments must be relevant and not obstruct the hearing. Any additional presentation, which must be on new information, will be limited to 3 minutes. Members of council may ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the function of council members during a public hearing is to listen to the views of the public, not to debate the merits of matters with citizens. Any debate by members of council will occur at the subsequent vote. So the order of proceedings for each item normally is going to be that, first of all, the city clerk will briefly describe the matter under consideration. Then the applicant or their agent will be invited to make a brief presentation up to 10 minutes. The city clerk will identify any written submissions received. Oral submissions from the public will be heard and any further written submissions will be received. And finally, the hearing will be closed and matters may be considered. Please observe these rules. If you have any concerns with the manner in which the hearing is conducted, direct your comments to the chair. So, Mr. Clerk, first item.
Your Worship, item 1 is temporary commercial use permit TU 20-905119. The location is 8351 River Road and Duck Island, Lot 87, Section 21, Block 5, North Range 6, West Plan 34592. The applicant is Firework Productions Limited. The purpose of the application is to permit a temporary commercial use permit to allow for the operation of a night market event and supporting off-street parking at 8351 River Road and Duck Island, Lot 87, Section 21, Block 5, North Range 6, West Plan 34592 for 2021, 2022, and 2023 during the following periods. First period is a night market event between May 21st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021 inclusive for a maximum of 80 event operational days. Days of operation shall be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, statutory holidays, and Thursdays during July and August 2021 only, with hours of operation generally between 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Sundays, statutory holidays, and Thursdays, July and August only, and 6 p.m. to midnight for all other days. The second period of the event would be between April 29th, 2022 to October 16th, 2022 inclusive for a maximum of 80 event operational days. Days of operation shall be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, statutory holidays, and June 30th, 2022, with hours of operation generally between 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Sundays and statutory holidays, and 6 p.m. to midnight for all other days. The third period of the event is a night market event between April 28th, 2023 to October 15th, 2023 inclusive for a maximum of 79 event operational days. Days of operation shall be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and statutory holidays. Operation hours shall generally be between 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Sundays and statutory holidays, and 6 p.m. to midnight for all other days.
All right. I see the applicant, Kevin Chung, is here. My notes indicate that Mr. Chung just wants to be available for questions. Is that correct, Mr. Chung?
Yes, Your Worship.
All right. Are there any written submissions?
Yes, Your Worship. We have two written submissions. The first one is from Norman Kwan, outlining some opposition to the temporary use permit. The second one we have is from Kathy Tung, also outlining opposition to the permit.
All right. Is anybody, no, there's nobody here who signed up as a delegation to speak to the matter, right? That's correct?
That's correct.
Sorry? There's no speaker. Okay. So let's ask for council consideration on the matter. Number one.
Move the council considerations.
Okay, so that's number one with
Aided.
all its details.
Yeah.
That's moved and seconded. Any comments, questions? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments, Mayor Brody, and a couple of questions. So I'd like to ask staff, what is the justification for approving 2021, 2022, and 2023? Why are we not looking at a one-year permit?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Day, throughout the history of the night market, it has always been done through a 3-year temporary use permit. The provincial legislation regarding temporary use permits is a 3-year duration.
So every market such as this that is asked to be approved by any city council must be for a 3-year period?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Day, no. It would be up to council should they elect to go with a different duration. I was simply saying that through the history of this event, it has been through 3-year permit cycles.
Okay. I have a question of staff also. I've heard a number of people who live on Corvette Way, which is just basically across the Island Way, and as you know, sound travels up. And what they've found is the music is just too loud. Now, we have heard from staff about noise management on page 16 of our report, and it talks about ongoing monitoring and fines can be done, and then the event organizer is actually going to be doing the ongoing monitoring, and that events can be adjusted. One of the things I brought up at committee is why couldn't we have stage, instead of being on the river facing the residents, which are southeast of this location, why not turn it around and put it so that stage facing the river and the airport, and will be less of an impact on the residents who live on Corvette Way?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Day, in terms of the site plan is based on a number of functional criteria that the event requires to address. Staff do believe that the noise management plan will address the concerns that have been raised by residents in the area.
All right, Councillor
I'm
Wolf.
not.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Your Worship, just a question, I guess a couple of short questions to staff. Was there any reply to the two letters that we received for tonight? I know it's not directed to Mayor and Council. It was a submission for this public hearing item. But have staff looked over the 5 points? It's identical in both letters. Is there anything that was brought to light that wasn't considered before when we discussed this? I know there's some things related to current COVID protocols. The comment about having it open all the way till December. I don't remember having that discussion on the how far it was open until. So was there any staff comment on that?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Wolf, I unfortunately have not seen the correspondence that was referred to. Having said that, once provided that correspondence, I will ensure that a response is provided to the individuals.
Okay. Can I ask if the applicant has seen the letter? Maybe they can respond before we vote on this.
Your Worship, I have not seen this, the two letters.
Okay. My other question then, thank you for being available. On our page, there's a big spreadsheet, page 27, 28, 29, and 30. I'm trying to make sense of it. So I assume that was the consultation done by the applicant, and all of the columns under comments are not applicable, except for one of them had a comment, but none of the last two columns are filled in. So no one was in support of it, and no one was not in support of it. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, I'll refer the question to Kevin Ng and the applicant. Perhaps Kevin can answer first before Mr. Chung.
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Wolf's question, the table provided is a summary of the consultation that was undertaken by the event organizer. In terms of the reasons why those boxes were identified as blank was perhaps in the responses. They didn't either receive a specific response where they were able to fill that out specifically. Outside of that, I would defer to the applicant to provide clarity on what criteria would have to be met in order for those boxes to be filled in.
Okay.
Is that possible? Sorry, through the chair, can I have the applicant comment if they can?
Mr. Chung, do you have any comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Through your chair. So we basically have visited the neighborhood with the different business and the surrounding. And my staff and I basically visit door to door and talk to whoever is available during that time. Some of the business are not are closed due to the COVID. And we basically talk to whoever is available and we ask them if they have a comment or if they have any concern. If they have expressed nothing, then we just leave it blank. Otherwise, if it's their business are closed, we drop off the letters in the mailbox, and then on the letter, they can reply back to us or call back if they have any issues on our application.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That helps to clarify kind of the method of consultation that was attempted here. I'm hesitating here. I supported this in the last times we've discussed it, but at this public hearing, I'm not feeling confident that we have the right proposal ahead of us, especially that there were some items brought up by the public members, and some of them, like the letter, they even say where their address of their business is, that they're the CEO of it. But if I look on the table, that same company is listed on there, but they're not showing any comment either way. So it just doesn't feel right to say that all of these have the blessing to go ahead, especially as was brought up. This is a 3-year thing. We're extending it to December. So I'm just having a little bit of concern. I'll have to mull this over while others ask questions. Thank you.
Councillor Al.
A question. In your application, you mentioned that you would like to operate this year from May 21st to December 31st. Now, I think obviously it's difficult for you to operate to begin on May the 21st. But is it really your plan to go as far as to the end of December? Or are you just trying to make up for 80 days, but the actual operation would be less? I mean, because in the past and for the future, you're talking about up to mid-October. So are you really prepared to operate between October 16th and December 31st? I think the weather doesn't support it.
Yeah, through your chair. As you understand that we're not in control of the timeline and also the schedule right now. It's based on the health minister to give us the blessings to go ahead with the event. So we don't know if we can open this year or not. But this is basically our second plan. If we delay to open, let's say mid-July or early August, it just our timeline can extend it a little longer so we can recoup our losses as much as we can. Is it guaranteed that we can open till November? No, I cannot say that. It's just based on whatever health guideline was given to us later.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just following up on what Councillor Au asked and the response from Mr. Chung. In the couple of pieces of correspondence we received, the concern was about having events during COVID. And so obviously they're not going to be able to be held until the provincial health order allows them to have that. One of the concerns was about capacity and the number of booths. And again, I guess that would fall under the provincial health order. And Vancouver Coastal Health, I believe, works with the applicant on the number of booths and licensing for the food businesses there. Is that correct?
Yes, through your chair. As you know, last year, when the COVID started, our event was actually on our way to open within 2 weeks, but we were actually closed for the entire season because of the pandemic. And you're right, we are working with the Vancouver Health, the staff, and trying to work out the rules, guidelines, and whatever they'll be coming up later on. So everything that we're going to do will be following all the guidelines by the health.
Thank you. And then, Your Worship, through you to staff, about traffic. I mean, the applicant has to have a traffic management plan, and they pay for the extra RCMP that are there, and they pay for the traffic, the people that are there. And are the businesses in the area, is it communicated to them if they have an issue with parking or traffic congestion around their business, who they would talk to about that? Can staff answer that?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh.
Through the chair, in response to Councillor McPhail, yes, the businesses in the area have the opportunity to liaise directly with the event organizer if the issue is having to do with access to a business while the event is occurring. So whether that's liaising with their traffic management company to allow for specific provisions where access is required, those discussions can happen, and staff can help facilitate those. In addition, our transportation staff also are on site throughout the season, and if they are made aware of specific issues arising with respect to access, they can certainly investigate and help facilitate access to address some of the concerns from the businesses in the area.
Great, thanks very much.
All right. With that, we don't have any more speakers, so we'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf and Councillor Day opposed. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Your Worship, item number 2 is Richmond Zoning Bylaw 8500, Amendment Bylaw 10248, RZ 19-873781. The location is 11240 Williams Road. The applicant is Ben Panesar. The purpose is to rezone the subject property from the single detached RS1E zone to the compact single detached RC2 zone to permit the property to be subdivided to create 2 single-family lots with vehicle access from the rear lane. First reading of this was on April 26, 2021.
Okay, now I understand we have the applicant, Ben Panesar. You're here and available for questions. Mr. Panesar? Do you want to unmute yourself? Are you there? Mr. Panesar?
Mr. Panesar just sent a note saying he's here listening.
Okay, well, he's there in any case. All right, any written submissions?
No written submissions, Your Worship.
And there's no delegations coming from the floor. So, just hang on a sec. I'm not seeing any questions.
Move second and third.
Okay, so that's moved and it's seconded. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a further question that I did not ask at committee and or at council. The laneway that's proposed to, or sorry, that's already there. I'd like to know, is there a proposal to have that laneway improved? I know to the east it would connect with Seabrook Crescent. You can see this on page 68. Is there plans that actually becomes like somewhat of a full-on road, like an extension of Seabrook, or in the future?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, you're speaking about the north-south pedestrian sort of area along the west side? To the south?
Yes, and it wraps around to being on the south side of this property as well, where the driveway it would be. Yeah.
Okay. So there's no further improvements to the laneway other than some changes that are being made to the location of a hydro pole that's actually located in the rear of the lane. So there would be no further improvements. There's no intention for that to become anything more than a lane.
Thank you. Then to follow up then through the chair would be there'd be then no near future plans to dig up the lane and road and heighten it or anything that's not needed for this development?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, that would not be required as part of this development, no.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Those are my questions. I just give a comment then now that it's on the floor, if I may. Again, I went past the three some of the tallest trees in Richmond, the three Lombardy poplars that are in that corner, and to hear that the laneway is pretty much a protected space right now, the root systems of those three trees really go underneath and are held in security by that lane and road. And seeing that on the development proposal, that the intended use for that southwest corner of the property is really nothing. It doesn't interfere with the building footprint. There is a bit of a walkway that kind of would wrap around there, and then it looks like a staircase coming off of the garage or something. I'm looking on page 70. And so I think there could be work to retain these trees, and I know people who live in the area and identified these trees when I mentioned significant trees in the area. Unfortunately, none of them were here, I guess, to speak to it. But they, from what I heard, would be opposed to the removal of them. So on their behalf, I'll be opposing this tonight. Thank you.
All right, we're going to call the question then. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. Okay, the third item, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, item number 3 is official community plan bylaw 7100 and 9000, amendment bylaw 10258, and Richmond zoning bylaw 8500, amendment bylaw 10259. The location is citywide and the applicant is the City of Richmond. The purpose of the OCP amendment is to revise permitted uses and related policies for religious assembly use in the number 5 Backlands Road Policy Area, Schedule 1, and the East Richmond Area McLennan Sub-Area Plan, Schedule 2.13a. The purpose of the zoning amendment is to amend the assembly zone to only allow religious assembly as the principal use and supporting secondary uses for sites located in the number 5 Road Backland Policy Area, and include a provision requiring Agricultural Land Commission approval for any assembly zoned site in the Agricultural Land Reserve. Also to amend the assembly zone to permit education as a site-specific allowance. Also to amend the religious assembly number 5 road zone to allow only religious assembly as the principal use and supporting secondary uses. Also to amend the use and term definition of religious assembly to clarify permitted accessory uses. First reading of these bylaws was April 26, 2021.
Okay, so Richmond is the applicant here. Does staff have anything they further want to say about this application? Staff?
Through your worship, I would just like to add that the ALC has reviewed the package of official community plan and zoning bylaw amendments and have provided written confirmation that they have no concerns about the changes. The ALC has also confirmed that the applicable revisions to the official community plan, number 5 road, backlands policy, and zoning districts for this area are consistent with the recently communicated ALC decision.
All right. So we have a number of parties who wish to delegate to us this evening. So we'll start off with Mahmoud Jaffer. Mr. Jaffer? So as you come, get ready to go, what you do is you introduce yourself and you've got a maximum of 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor, Honorable Malcolm Mayor Brody, respected Richmond City Councilors, good evening. I begin in the name of God, the most beneficent, most merciful, and greet you with the Islamic greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mahmoud Jaffer. I am before you today officially representing the Shia Muslim community of British Columbia in the capacity as the Director of Public Relations and Communications for our organization, a registered charitable society in the province of BC, founded in 1975. I do thank you all for the opportunity to delegate to you at this evening's public hearing for the proposed bylaw amendments. Last March 2020, a delegation from our community stood before you in council chambers just before the pandemic shutdown in BC, when the Planning Committee deliberated similar bylaw changes. At that time, we were encouraged that the proposed bylaw changes were referred back to staff in order to perform a detailed analysis of existing institutions along number 5 road backlands to explore current and proposed future uses of these properties, in order to provide a holistic recommendation back to council. We are, however, concerned of the implications that the proposed bylaw changes do bring to our community. Our community established ourselves, our roots in the city of Richmond in 1978, when we purchased a 3/4 acre site on Sexsmith Road and built our first center, which served the community for 23 years. In June 2000, we laid the foundation for our new facility at 8580 number 5 road. And on August 25th, 2002, the Azahra Islamic Center officially opened. A facility which has a mosque, a place of worship, lecture halls, gymnasium, meeting rooms, office and classroom space, which is currently shared by our Sunday school and our full-time independent school. In September 2003, the Azahra Islamic Academy began its operations as a full-time Group 1 independent elementary school under the BC Ministry of Education, with a modest 20 students across kindergarten and grade 1, each year adding on a grade to our elementary school program. This past year, amidst the global pandemic, we expanded to a middle school and added a grade 8 option, and we have actually reached a record enrollment of over 200 students from pre-kindergarten to grade 8. And the expansion of our middle school continues with a planned grade 9 in September 21. Over the years, there has been increased demand from parents and students to expand the operations, the middle and high school, and we have been working within our existing footprint of our current facility to accommodate this demand. This accommodation of space, however, is only a temporary measure. In 2016, the community purchased the property immediately to the north of us at 8320 number 5 road. Preliminary plans were drawn up at that time. And by the way, I neglected to mention there is a written submission that hopefully all councillors should have received that was sent in to the city clerk this morning. And as part of that package was also the plans that had been drawn up to develop a new school and community center facility. In 2017, an extensive community consultation process took place to validate that the community demand and desire for development of additional educational space was a necessity. Sure. Is there a question there?
No, carry on.
Okay, sorry. And discussions began with city staff regarding development processes, protocols, and options at that time. Over the years, the Shia Muslim community of British Columbia, the Azhar Islamic Center and Academy have been active and proud members of the Highway to Heaven Association, working and collaborating with our neighbors, including other independent schools along the Number 5 Road corridor. During this time, our community has always been compliant with the agricultural requirements for farming the backlands as part of the policy. Furthermore, with any new development of the new property, we have already started exploring environmentally friendly options, which would increase the city's green footprint in addition to continuing to meet the agricultural requirements under existing zoning bylaws. To conclude, as I have indicated, and as my colleagues delegating after me will further attest to, education is a fundamental aspect of our faith and community. And therefore, the Shia Muslim community of British Columbia has some philosophical concerns with what the proposed bylaw changes do in differentiating religious assembly from education, where we actually see them as an integral part of each other. These bylaw changes, however, we understand are being driven by the Agricultural Land Commission, who we have also reached out to express our feelings. And however, should council feel the need to proceed with amending the official community plan and the Number 5 Road backlands policy, that we formally then make a request that a site-specific allowance to permit the existing school expansion or any new educational development on the properties at 8320 Number 5 Road and 8580 Number 5 Road be granted to the Shia Muslim community of British Columbia as part of a grandfathering clause in adoption of this policy. Thank you for your time and attention and consideration to this important matter.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question from Councillor Day. And I'll just remind you, we've got about 7 or 8 delegations to go. So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jaffer. So I'm looking at on our page PH 100, and it says that you are put down for a school or school expansion. In your case, it's an expansion. Have you already submitted an application to the City of Richmond?
No. So as I mentioned, we started discussions. Plans were drawn up in 2016. We did start some formal discussions with city planning staff in 2017. However, at that time, the decision on the community was to focus on paying down the loan that we had taken on the existing property before proceeding with development applications. So although we were down the road in the process, we did not get to the state of actually formally submitting a development application.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Al.
Yes, Your Worship. I have 2 questions. In your letter, you mentioned that you are going to have grade 8 you already had grade 8 in September 2020, and then you are going to have grade 9 program in September 2021. So in terms of space, how much room do you have in terms of, taking in more students beyond grade 9?
I think even to make grade 9 happen, we're having to do some twists and turns with our existing facilities. So we are really at capacity now, and we realize that perhaps we're a little bit late to the game in terms of the expansion, because it's going to take some time. We understand to get to development application approval and actually develop. So. At this point in time, beyond grade 9, I do have members of the school board that are delegating after me, and perhaps they can address that. But in my understanding of of things, our space will probably be maxed out after this current expansion.
Okay. My other question is that in your letter, you also mentioned that since 2017, you have started the discussion with our planning staff for the school expansion, and you confirmed that you haven't submitted a plan yet. My question is, how far away are you from actually having a plan, a definite plan ready to be submitted? So 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? So how far away are you from the real submission?
Well, I think I know there are some prerequisites prior to a submission, and like I said, we were working through those back in 2017 before the decision was made to just prioritize the painting. So, I would say optimistically within a year, I think we could be at that stage, and I think if granted this opportunity to have a site-specific allowance on our properties, then our community would work diligently towards expediting and getting a development application formally submitted.
Good, thank you.
I've got a question for staff. If we bring in the policy that's contemplated tonight, and let's say regardless of what institution it is, but one of the religious facilities wants to expand their educational facilities, or one of the schools wants to expand, so then it's against policy, can they apply for an exception to policy?
Go ahead, Kevin. Through your worship, in response, the opportunity for an application to be made, regardless of whether it is or is not consistent with policy, is available. So that is an option that exists.
So let's say it went against policy, so they could apply asking for the extended allowance or whatever it is, and council would be in a position to agree with them. Obviously, it would have to be forwarded to the ALC, but to the extent city council is involved, city council could agree with them and give them that wider expansion or extension as they request, right?
Through the chair, that's correct. Ultimately, if that's the position taken, it would also be subject to an ALC approval process.
Yeah, right. Okay, the next delegation is Oscar Puzzolo. Sir, are you there? Oh, I see you there. Yes, sir.
I am just turning on my video. There we go. I believe I'm on somewhere here. Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor Brody, and respected Richmond City Council members. My name is Oscar Puzzolo. I have the privilege and the honor of being the principal of Azara Islamic Academy. I promise to stay within my 5 minutes, and I humbly thank you for this opportunity to speak. We are fortunate to live in a society where parents have the freedom of choice for their children's education. Our highway to heaven along number 5 road can be seen as an exemplar, not only by our commitment and responsibility to the city of Richmond, but also to the spiritual, educational, and social value it brings to its students. Through dedication and commitment, our schools, there's an emphasis placed on faith, character development, morals, and values, all of which contribute to the success of our community through positive actions by our students in becoming proud citizens of Richmond. Being an educator, and before I continue, I have to say a year ago I sat in chambers, and I must say I'm feeling much more comfortable because you look all so much smaller and less intimidating. But having said that, being an educator, I'd be remiss if I didn't share a very short story with you. And as I said, I will stay within my 5 minutes. Long ago, people lived under the rule of a king. The people of the kingdom were very happy as they led a very prosperous life with an abundance of wealth and no misfortunes. Once, the king decided to go visiting places of historical importance and pilgrim centers at distant places. He decided to travel by foot to interact with his people. People of distant places were very happy to have a conversation with their king. They were proud that their king had a kind heart. After several weeks of travel, the king returned to the palace. He was quite happy that he had visited many pilgrim centers and witnessed his people leading a prosperous life. However, he had one regret. He had an intolerable pain in his feet, as it was the first trip by foot covering a long distance. He complained to his ministers that the roads weren't comfortable and that they were very stony. He could not tolerate the pain. He said that he was very much worried about the people who had to walk along those roads, as it would be painful for them too. Considering all of this, he ordered his servants to cover the roads in the whole country with leather, so that the people of his kingdom can walk comfortably. The king's ministers were stunned to hear his order, as it would mean that thousands of cows would have to be slaughtered in order to get sufficient quantity of leather, and it would cost a huge amount of money also. Finally, a wise man from the ministry came to the king and said that he had another idea. The king asked what the alternative was, and the minister said, "Instead of covering the roads with leather, why don't you just have a piece of leather cut in an appropriate shape to cover your feet?" The king was very much surprised by his suggestion and applauded the wisdom of the minister. He ordered a pair of leather shoes for himself and requested all his countrymen as well to have shoes. The moral: instead of trying to change the world, we should try to change ourselves. Well, that's the business we're in, changing lives to become better. We teach our students that change is good. We teach them to embrace change, and that change gives us an opportunity to grow. Change can be vibrant, and we should embrace it when it confronts us. We must not forget, we are not here for profit. We are here to comply. We are here to farm the land, but also farm the minds of each student that attends our academy. We respect and comply by the rules placed before us, and in so doing, go to great lengths to plan for the future. A future which now may be in jeopardy because of what? I ask myself, why must we halt our mission in our own institution that is also our home, that we have grown and nurtured from conception? What has years of planning yielded? We have seen amazing growth, particularly over the last 5 years, and almost doubling our enrollment, and from having many split grades to full classes. Our reputation through planning and hard work has resulted in families moving to Richmond from across the province, Canada, and overseas, just to attend our academy, and currently the only operating Shia Muslim school in British Columbia. Future expansion for us is necessary to continue to provide this choice to our parents. The restrictions that are proposed not only limits our school growth, but also the influx of families to our city. Ultimately, this affects housing, local businesses, and revenues to the city. In closing, humbly ask that you reconsider this proposal and allow our Highway to Heaven community to continue all the great work we have all done over the years and contributed to the success of our city. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councillor Day, you have a question.
Thank you so much for the story. I love hearing stories like that. I just want to be clear that you understand that if you go to page 90 of our of the report, it says that the ALC decision to restrict uses to religious assembly does not support the development of schools in the policy area. So while I'm pretty sympathetic to what you're saying, this isn't a Richmond decision. We're basically changing our policies to be in line with the Agricultural Land Commission that ultimately, eventually have, the say. And you understand that, right?
I do.
Okay, so my question to you is, if the school needs to continue to expand, and if the agricultural rules don't allow expansion physically on the property, is there any reason why you couldn't have a satellite school maybe over by Ironwood, maybe in a warehouse or at a storefront where the older students could have a special, campus where they could continue to study?
Well, I think from my perspective, through to your worship, to Ms. Day, we have our mosque there, and this is a place of worship for our students, and for us to have our entire student body close to the mosque, I think is very, very important. The prayers that happen daily, and for Muslims 5 times a day, at least for us, we have our prayer in the morning and we have our salat prayer in the afternoon. And the availability of that place of worship is crucial for our entire student body. So to have a satellite school would mean to have also a mosque on another location. And as we have our facility where it is and the property next door, it just really makes a lot of sense to have everything connected.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that to me. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, sir. Before we go to the next delegation, I overlooked written submissions, so I'll ask Mr. Clerk to give us a summary of the written submissions.
Yes, Your Worship. We have 4 written submissions on this item. The first one, in order of the date received, was from Balwant Sangra with the India Cultural Centre of Canada, expressing support for the amendments. The second one that Council has received is from Shannon Lambie, a planner with the ALC, with a variety of comments on the proposed amendments. The third item we have is from Sean Driver, legal counsel with Pythagoras Academy, with a variety of comments on the proposed amendments. And we have the additional item from Mahmoud Jaffer with comments on the proposed amendments as he outlined this evening.
Okay. Now the next delegation is Azmat Ali. Mr. Ali.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, Mayor Brody, and respected Richmond City Council members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in this meeting today. My name is Azmat, and I serve as the chair of the school board of Azhara Islamic Academy. I'm also a practicing CPA in the city of Richmond for many years. Myself, past and present fellow board members, along with many parents and community members, have given our heart and soul, along with countless hours to this cause, i.e. the education and more specifically to Azhara Islamic Academy, with the hope of making this education available to more and more students and making difference in their lives. Months-long strategic meetings and consultations were held and are still being held with only one goal in mind, which is to expand the school and provide the high-quality, well-rounded education to students of all ages, from junior kindergarten to all the way to grade 9 in September of 2021. And to that point, we not only offer electives, ADST and after-school clubs, but have collaborated with other schools in Richmond to create a strong integration within the society, and all this with a non-profit motive in mind. Our objectives are not financial at all, and the whole school board is basically a volunteer. Our objective is, as Mr. Pizzola mentioned, is nurturing well-rounded and responsible citizens. In addition to our independent school, we also have a religious Sunday school that operates out of that facility, and which is also at capacity, and there's a wait list at the moment. Pre-pandemic, we had close to 300 students attending every weekend, and at the moment, the enrollment is about 200 students. Our hopes were high until we learned of this new policy last year, which essentially, puts a lot of strain into expanding when compared to the pre-policy period, which is very concerning, and from a board's point of view, it concerns us from the point of view of the expansion and future of our kids there. The expansion, we believe, and as Mr. Pisola mentioned as well, is that not only beneficial to the school community, but will be beneficial for the greater community of Richmond, as this will have a direct impact to the city of Richmond. We also see generally that when policies of such pervasive nature are being changed, the existing organizations that have invested significant amount of resources and time and monies and donor funds into these projects are usually allowed a specific allowance or more specifically a grandfathering of some sort to allow to move forward with the plans. And that's basically what we're kind of expecting at the very least, that it could be provided to the school of Azhar Islamic Academy would really help us in carrying out our vision and mission and make difference in our multiple bodies there, students and parents and their expectations as well. Thank you once again for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We have a question from Councillor Au.
Yes. Okay. My question is, how big is the size of your school under planning in terms of the number of students and also the space? I mean, you mentioned 200. Are you talking about existing number of students? Or are you talking about the maximum student in the future is 200? And for the new school, do you need to take any space from the farmland, or you can accommodate the new school space within the lands that's already been developed?
Through the chair to Councillor Chuck. Yes, so at the moment we have over 200 students attending all the way to grade 8, and we are on a wait list at the moment too for many grades at the school as we speak for enrollment for September 2021. And the second part of your question was that do we need to take any farmland or no? Based on the plans that were drawn up in 2016 and 17, my understanding is no, and that is basically going to be not covering the backlands, but more so the development site, which is going to be the front land, pretty much, right? And as we know that these two properties, the 85808320, are connected as well, right? Which will also allow us to work within the front lands more so when compared to the back. Just to further answer that, the existing facility as well, the backlands are used for farming. Like we know we have blueberries, and we know that pre-pandemic we had quite a bit of an activity of farming activity back then as well on those lands too. So we're very cognizant of the fact that farming is important to ALC. And that's how we do it.
So right now you have over 200 students. So what is the future capacity of your new school? I mean, under planning, are you talking about 500 students or less or more?
Through the chair to Councillor Chuck, yes, it would be to the tune of that, where with the school that we're planning over there onto the new property is going to be pretty much the same size as of the existing school. So another 300 students would be accommodated over there, and we do plan to take it all the way to grade 12 if we get the opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll go to the next delegation, Murtaza Bashan.
Honorable Mayor Brody and respected Richmond City Council members, I begin in the name of God, merciful to all and compassionate to each. My name is Murtaza Bashir, and some of you would remember me from over a year ago. I speak to you as the Imam who has served the SMCBC for over 10 years, the Shia Muslim community of BC for over 10 years, and a board member of the Azhar Islamic Academy. I thank you for your time and your attention that you have allotted to me this evening. It was both with great interest, but also with great concern that I read once again the proposed bylaw amendments that would apply to the number 5 road backlands area. In particular, I noted that whilst religious assemblies would be a permitted usage of the area, that K-12 educational institutions would no longer be a permitted usage of the land, or it would be legally non-conforming. And hence I was left with rather a very philosophical question to reflect upon, and that is, how do we grow as a religious community without the ability to grow our educational institutions? The two for us are very much linked to each other. The school is an integral part of who we are as a Muslim community. In our faith tradition, the responsibility of educating the children falls primarily upon the parents and primarily upon the community. And we notice that in community schools like ours, parents take a very active and a very close role in the education and the nurturing of their children. And hence, I was left to think of how the amendments would limit our ability to take responsibility for the education of our children and embody a Muslim community in its true spirit. It's also a place, the school is also a place where the children are nurtured with ethics and the practices of the faith. It's a place where the children every day learn about the sanctity of knowledge. They learn about how to respect the environment as a creation of God. They learn about how to respect the law as a part of the promises that they have made. And it is also demonstrated as a community whereby not only are we farming the backlands on our current existing property, but we have invested in farming in it and role modeled respecting the law there, and how to respect human beings as creatures of God. It's a place where they develop a love for prayer and an affinity for the mosque, which is attached to our center. Many alumni who have spoken to me reminisce how the school was such an integral part of building their relationship with the center, with the community, and with the mosque. In other words, it's not just a place where they come to learn the BC curriculum or they come to learn about the faith and values. It's also a place where they come to learn how to love and live the faith and the values. And once again, I'm left to reflect on how can we grow as a religious institution without the ability to grow our educational institutions. I also want to quickly emphasize the role of educational institutions in building a sense of community. The sense of community is already strained in modern societies and further strained during the pandemic. And not to be overly philosophical this evening, but communities can not only be built upon religious assemblies that happen once or twice a week. A community is a sense of meaningful relationship that takes place on a daily basis between the members of that community. And the educational institution is one place where I have personally seen, as a father of 2 daughters who sends his children to the school, where that sense of relationship and community is built. If I may be allowed over here to respond to respected Councillor Carol Day's question about why not move it to another location. Well, one reason is the mosque, but the other reason is that through our educational institution, through the school, we have been able to build a very strong sense of a tight-knit community that we would like to carry in the future as well. And so once again, the question, how do we grow as a strong community without the ability to grow or expand our educational institution? It's for this purpose that our community came together a few years ago to purchase the land next to 8580 number 5 road. We engaged our community in a process, in a survey process with them, extensive feedback from them. We formulated conceptual drawings. and also detailed drawings for application, some of which have been included in today's written statement or attached to the written statement. We held fundraising drives where members of our community even have donated their religious dues, knowing that a school structure would be built, or an educational institution would be built next door to us. And last year, during a pandemic year, we started a grade 8 program. This year, we will hopefully be expanding to grade 9, with some difficulty, of course, and hopefully hoping to also get all the way to grade 12. And just as we are about to embark upon the next steps of growing as a religious community, it seems to be unfair to us that the proposed amendment to the bylaws would deprive us at this critical point of the ability to expand our educational institutions and to grow as a community. And so I ask of you this evening that you once again consider the impact of the policy change to a number of religious communities on Number 5 Road, and in particular to our community that has come so far into the planning of the expansion of the school. And I reiterate once again on behalf of our community that if you feel the need to proceed with the amendment to the bylaw, then it is our request that a site-specific allowance be granted to the SMCBC to allow existing school expansion or new school development at our properties on 8320 and 8580 Number 5 Road. Thank you once again.
All right, thank you. Not seeing any hands up, so we'll go to the next speaker, which is Chris Wilson.
Mr. Mayor and council people, thank you for your time. And I actually have had some of what I was going to address already concerned from my friends up the road. And so I feel no need to continue and waste our time with going through the same process already. So with that said, I will listen and make sure that we are complying with city bylaws and ARL bylaws.
Which is your organization?
We are Church on 5. We were formerly Richmond Bethel. We are in partnership with the Richmond Christian School. And so the high school campus would be right next to us, and the middle campus is located on our current property.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Can I just get clarification? What address is that one referring to?
10200 Number 5 Road.
All right, the next speaker is Sean Driver.
Sorry, Council and Mayor, I'm just waiting for my video. Thank you.
All right.
Council and Mayor and Council, my name is Sean Driver, and I wanted to just take a moment to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I appear on behalf of Pythagoras Academy Society, who own property at 9500 Number 5 Road. I wanted to take the opportunity to take a sort of a different angle. I believe that you have the letter that I authored back on May 14th before you, and I'm going to intend to go.
Just a minute, Mr. Driver. Are you a lawyer?
I am a lawyer. I am a legal counsel, yes, representing Pythagoras Academy Society.
I'm going to ask our lawyer, Tony, is this appropriate to hear from their lawyer?
Yes, Your Worship. He may, the applicant or the owner may speak through their counsel.
All right. Okay. I'm sorry to have interrupted. Please go ahead.
No, that's quite all right, and I'm not coming with any malfeasance or any malcontent. I'm just coming to state my assessments on behalf of my client with respect to the property. So I believe that you do have my letter that's authored for you May 14, 2020, and it's my intention to go through that letter with you somewhat and provide an opportunity to have a discussion. I can advise, just as I take my legal hat off, I am also a former city councillor from Williams Lake, BC, back in 2000, would have been 2001. It seems like many moons ago. In any way, the issue that I've had with this is more with respect to the process than it is with respect to the policy, although on behalf of my clients, I'll echo the language of Mr. Pozzolo, Jaffer, Ali, and Bachu that were before us. But if I lead you to the third paragraph within my letter, and I identify there that it says halfway through, the undersigned has confirmed that the 2000 resolution with Shannon Lambie on the ALC, and then continues on to read, is not included in the materials considered by City Council. What I'm speaking to there is, if you refer to the letter of Shannon Lambie that is in your records at PH 95, 96, and 97, predominantly at 97, you will see the language primarily at subparagraph E. On page 97, it reads, the City of Richmond is asked to update their assembly and institutional zoning bylaw to limit the uses permitted in the Backlands policy area. And what this ALR is relying on there is a resolution 174-2000. And I wanted to know what that resolution was, and it was not included in the materials. And I say that that's concerning, especially because when contacting Ms. Lambie, and I should advise, I reached out to the ALC on Tuesday, May 11th, and I received a copy of the resolution at issue that's attached to my letter of May 14th. On May 11th, I did request the minutes, and I have not received them, although I was advised Wednesday, May 12th, that the request is being considered. I authored my letter on May 14th, recognizing that this concern needed to be raised, not having the answer to the questions that I raised within my letter, and those questions are essentially this. In the letter of the ALC, at subparagraph E on page 97, they say that policy 174 justifies changing use to religious assembly uses only in the on the frontlands and within the Backlands policy. When you review the resolution at issue, which is 174-2000, and it is on page, well, it's the 7th page in my package. There's a March 22 letter from 2000. And the city policies there, number 1 and number 2, do not accord. They are completely opposite. They're different than what the ALC says that letter stands for. In Resolution 174-2000, religious assembly uses are not restricted, or the frontlands are not restricted to religious assembly uses only. Instead, Resolution 174 reads that assembly district uses are permitted, public and institutional uses permitted, certain school/public use district uses are permitted, and that includes public park, public recreation facility, municipal works, and otherwise. And so what we have here is we have a disconnect. We have the ALC, who I appreciate has a relationship with respect to its lands. It's got, pursuant to Section 6 of the Agricultural Land Commission Act, it has purposes that it must rely on. But there is a disconnect and there is a confusion between what they say they're relying on for policy and what has been communicated to the City of Richmond. And without the minutes, without an opportunity to review, it becomes impossible for the public to be able to understand the process and procedure, both on behalf of the ALC and on behalf of the City of Richmond, as to how this decision to modify a seminal document in the form of the OCP, which is a statement of objectives and policies that drive the bus when it comes to land use planning in any municipality in the province. And so I refer to the duty of fairness, and I do so, with reservations, because it's always difficult to say someone's not being fair. And I'm not alleging malfeasance. I have no evidence of malfeasance. This may be a mistake. It may be influence. but the information is simply not there. And I went to the Ombudsman in favor of relying on judicial decisions, just to take some neutral language of what that duty of fairness is. And that's on page 3 of the letter. And I bolded the highlighted parts. It says that fairness requires that the City of Richmond provide all relevant information to the public prior to a public hearing. Well, it doesn't say prior to public hearing. It says decisions have to be based on relevant information. I suggest because we have a public hearing, it should be included in the package. And no fault to the City of Richmond, but the relevant information is not there because there's a disconnect. And if you follow to the second paragraph on page 3, I say, by following a fair process, members of the public can better understand the reasons for decisions being made for those in positions of authority. And unfortunately, that fair process, again, no fault to the City of Richmond here, as far as we're aware at this point in time, but no fault to the City of Richmond. It can be no fault or no ability for the members of public to understand the decisions that are being made. It's prudent in the circumstances. And I do want to address two concerns. One question was raised by Councillor Day, and respectfully, with respect to PH90, that this is an ALC decision. Section 6 of the Act, the Agricultural Land Commissions Act, specifically provides that the ALC is obligated to encourage local governments and its agents to enable and accommodate farm use of the land. And while I appreciate that it's quite often that it comes as a directive, there's an obligation to be fair, to share the information, and to make sure that the public's informed of the process. And so while the ALC may have mandated this or suggested a mandate, I'm assuming it came through a consultation process, we don't know the answer as to whether this is a Richmond decision or an ALC decision or an influencing decision elsewhere, because the information hasn't been provided to be able to assess that conclusion. And then with respect to the OCP and whether an exception can be provided under the OCP, staff was absolutely correct, Your Worship, by advising that that an exception can be allowed in the future. But I just remind the City Council members of how frequently they have, likely in the past, as I did as a former City Councillor, just simply relied on the OCP to advance matters forward and to be clear. The OCP is a visioning document that should not be treaded on lightly. It went through 30 open houses and a 2.5-year period. It's a seminal document that needs to be afforded the appropriate consideration. And so what I suggest is prudent in the circumstances is for this resolution to be adjourned, and with full disclosure, I know that staff at the start of this provided that the ALC have stated that the applicable revision in zoning is consistent with the communicated ALC decision letter. I don't know the date of that letter. I don't have that before me as to whether that came after my letter or not. But what we have here are real issues with procedural fairness. We have the inability for the public to be informed as to whether this was an ALC decision, how it came about, what the considerations were within the commission at the commission level, and how that was influenced and informed to the City of Richmond. And it's for those purposes that I say it's fundamentally important that this matter be adjourned until those answers can be provided and the public is afforded an opportunity to review the documents to be able to inform itself and understand the decisions that you're making today. And I'm happy to take questions.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any hands, so thank you. We'll go on to the next speaker, which is Eric Chu. Mr. Chu.
Hello, I'm just starting with video. Good evening, Mayor Brody and City Councilors. Thank you for this time and allowing us to speak. I'm going to admit that I'm not going to sound nearly as smart as Mr. Driver, but I will try to present our case. Most of the previous speakers have already said most of what I was going to say, but I just want to highlight a few things. Most of the speakers before me spoke of community, spoke of education, and spoke of religion. And in the conclusion of the document on page basically it says remove the education as permitted use, and then amend and amend the religious assembly definition to exclude school. We just believe that education and religion and community all go hand in hand. In the last several years, I represent Richmond Christian School along on 10260 number 5 road. We have about 480 students at that site, and from K to 12, we have about 500 inquiries to attend our school, and every year we turn away a lot of them. Can only accept about 75 per year, and without the ability to expand, it would significantly hinder our ability to build a community. Not just a community, but a religious community through education. I understand that we can always apply for an exception or a site-specific allowance down the future or down the road. But, Richmond is a very inclusive community, and our society is moving towards more of an inclusive society. Even though legalistically speaking, we are allowed to apply for site-specific allowance in the future, it is a message that we're sending to the rest of the province or everywhere else that do we really want to increase the stringency of this inclusiveness? At the end of the day, my concern, or our family, we have about 650 families that represent Richmond Christian School, is yes, we want to grow. Secondly, what happens if something happens to a building or the roof flies off and the building get permits and whatnot? The added stringency in terms of application and perhaps I might even call it red tape just adds another layer of uncertainty to what we want to accomplish, even just to maintain our building or to replace our building in the future. So with that said, I just wanted to ask that at the very minimum, but the best case scenario is obviously to not remove the word education from the use, the definition of permitted use. But if this must move ahead in the affirmative, I would like to ask that there's a site-specific allowance grandfathering for the 10260 number 5 road Richmond School site. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a question from Councillor Al.
Mr. Joe, to tell me, now you mentioned that your school might have a plan to expand. And again, how far away from the actual plan? I mean, is it just a concept, or you have already done some work, and how close are you in relation to having a concrete plan ready for submission?
We're doing various levels of feasibility study. Obviously, this whole amendment adds a bit of a wrench to the whole thing, right? So we're looking at, in terms of feasibility, it is financial mostly, because we cannot, if this goes through, then basically there's no point in trying to acquire this land along number 5 road. So we're looking at different options, but ultimately which path we go down rests largely on the decision of this amendment, post-amendment.
All right, thank you very much, sir. We'll go to the last speaker, which is Michael Lipton.
Your Worship, City Councilors, fellow community members. My name is Michael Lipton, and I'm here as the board chair of the Richmond Jewish Day School. Even though today is the Jewish holiday of Shavuot, I felt it was important to be here to represent the school and support our neighbors along number 5 road.
An important element of this holiday is the celebration of education. RJDS is a community Jewish day school from kindergarten to grade 7, committed to providing an inspiring education infused with Jewish values, academic excellence, and community responsibility. Our students are strongly involved in the Richmond community, nurtured through a variety of partnerships with other institutions along the highway to heaven. We take tremendous pride in our students graduating and become valued contributors to our city and communities. I appeared before this council on March 3rd, 2020 to express our school's concern with proposed amendments to the City of Richmond zoning bylaw 8500, and specifically the change to prohibited education as a permitted use in this zone area. We were pleased that council was receptive to the concerns raised by many of the members of the Highway to Heaven Association, as well as thousands of individuals from Richmond and other communities. Despite the revisions made to the amendments to permit the continued operations of the existing school facilities in the number 5 road backlands policy area, the proposal before council today will still significantly impact the ability for the Highway to Heaven to continue to be a positive force in our city. The proposed amendments could stunt the future of some institutions to upgrade their facilities, thereby affecting the school's sustainability. The changes may prevent some schools and institutions from building the infrastructure they need to continue to serve their community members, and which benefit our city and residents on a daily basis. They should not need to rely on exceptional approval from council when the very nature of the developmental plans of number 5 road was for religious institutions, including schools, to succeed. It behooves City Council to advocate to the ALC to consider revising their policies. The City of Richmond is blessed with having a variety of religious institutions, including schools, gathered along the same stretch of roadway operating in harmony. It is important for the city to do what it takes to preserve this diversity and collaboration. I strongly encourage you to further reconsider the proposed amendments to include further grandfathering in provisions for the existing institutions along number 5 road. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We have a question from Councillor Day. You're on mute.
I think I'm ever going to learn this, Mayor Brody. Okay, so on attachment 3, it's got a list of all of the churches, and under the Richmond Jewish Day School, it doesn't show any school or school expansion plans. Is there something wrong there? Am I missing something?
I spoke with Kevin about that. The school is there, and what that indicates is future plans of expansion. Our school doesn't specifically have a plan to expand the structure itself. I'm here mostly advocating for my fellow organizations along the road and the Highway to Heaven. Our school doesn't specifically have a plan to expand the exact site at the moment. Certainly, if we ever did, this would cause a problem, no doubt. But my main concern here is to help support our neighbors.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we had the information correct in our report.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Uncle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, other comments, concerns, or other questions, put it that way? All right, thank you to all the delegations who have spoken to us this evening. Your first presentation is 10 minutes. If you can have 3 more minutes if there's anything new. Are there any of you that have something new for 3 minutes maximum? I see Mr. Jaffer has his hand up. You have something new for a maximum of 3 minutes?
Yes, permission of the chair. I would like to address some comments that were made earlier regarding the exception process. That while we fully do recognize that if this proposed policy changes are adopted, that there is always an exception process. However, we strongly feel, as Mr. Lipton so eloquently delegated as well, just prior to me, that having to go through an extra step when already a development application process, especially on the property that we have, which we recognize as environmentally sensitive areas and other considerations that we will need to do our utmost diligence of and with in terms of development and ensuring all compliance with all regulations, that having to go through an exception process would really put an extra hurdle in the way of future development and expansion plans. And therefore, we once again humbly request Mayor and Council to grant a site-specific allowance and a grandfathering clause to the Shia Muslim community of British Columbia. Thank you.
All right, sir, thank you. Anyone else with something new? All right, I'll ask for council consideration on the first item, Amendment Bylaw 10-258, Plan Bylaw 7100 and 9000.
Move second and third.
So that's moved and that's seconded. Okay, any comments? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. If I could just get clarification, does this item specifically mentions action on second and third reading, and so does the next item. My question is, does the city is it required to do both together, or was there potential for us just to do second reading today, and then we'll wait to get some of the information that wasn't available, as some of the delegates have said? Maybe it's still coming, and then we could have a third reading. Is there a specific reason other than just to expedite the process?
Well, number 3 and 4 are adoption of them. I'll ask staff to comment on this.
Through your worship, the bylaws can be adopted tonight as council wishes, or if they wish to refer it back or only consider one additional reading, subject to further information, whatever it may be, council may do so.
Then thank you. My follow-up question then, if I may, through your worship. The site-specific request that relates to that was just referred to as the OCP exception process. If that were to be granted to the one property that was inquiring about it, how much easier, or how many less steps, or any idea on like the timeline that it would save a group to just to bring the proposal forward? I'm not saying that to have it approved and build it, but just to go through the process of having a site specific exemption now, or having them have to come through later on through this the other process that was referred to tonight. I just want to know how onerous this would be if they are to come back at a later time.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the question asked about providing for a site-specific allowance is really premature at this point in time, given the fact that any proposal for development of that site would be required to go through an ALC application and approval process. And so, and that would be then, would then determine the outcome on what subsequent applications they may then have to go through with the city. So that would be the staff comment on that specific site-specific request, without having some direction on an ALC application prior.
Great, I appreciate that staff clarification on that. At this point, I will be in support of the item on the floor, and I just want to also comment that I do feel the concern that was brought up back in March 2020 by many of the same speakers, and to hear that the consultation that was provided to them, and the information we did get that is on our table, or page 100, that table, the fact that they did have the box checked for school expansion, I remember asking about this the last time it was discussed. That's for the front lands, and I know there was. I was originally confused that it was requested for the backlands, but indeed it is just the front lands. And so, and in the last 2.5 years, I have experienced OCP amendments, so I won't be feeling that it's ruled out that they could not bring this back in the future. So that's some of the reasons why I will be in support of it. And I really appreciate all the comments that they provided and support for one another. Tonight really shows how the Highway for Heaven really has a united front, and I think that's very positive. So thank you.
Just before I go to the other speakers, I just want to speak to staff and ask about the process. I want to clarify this process, because if one of these organizations came in and said, we have an existing church and we have an existing school and we want to expand the school, you would tell them that is against our policy, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so they would make an application which would include their expansion plans. We want to expand in such and such a way, and we want you to make an exception to policy. The application is to make an exception to policy in such and such a way, right?
That is correct.
Okay, now because it's against policy and it's presumably against the OCP, staff would recommend denial, right?
Correct.
Okay, but then it's ultimately up to council, and council can say, yes, they like the application, or no, they don't, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so if they say they don't like it, that, because it's in the ALR, that will finish it off, correct?
Once again, correct. Yeah.
Okay, so if council says, no, this is a good idea, and we like it, and we realize it's contrary to policy, but it's good, and we like it, it should be done, then we can approve it from our point of view, and then it still has to go to the Agricultural Land Commission for their ultimate determination, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So that's, as I understand, I just want to clarify what the policy is. So if X school wants to expand, they would make application. Part of that application was to change the OCP. It would change it would be an exception to policy. They would ask for that exception to policy. The matter would be considered by staff. Staff would recommend denial because it's a contrary to policy. Council can say they agree with it or they don't agree with it. And if they say they agree with it, it goes to the ALC. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay,
Yeah,
I wanted that to be clear, given some of the previous discussion. Okay, so I've got Councillor Steeves, Councillor Au, Councillor Liu, and Councillor McPhail. Councillor Steeves.
Yeah, thanks. As I guess you might say the lead author of setting up the Highway to Heaven in the first place, I was the one that recommended the idea way back 35 years ago. I would like to emphasize that what the ALC is saying now is exactly what we agreed to 35 years ago, and I'll give you a bit of the history. The item, I think Pythagoras has mentioned 174-2000 was when they actually, once again, reiterated what we had agreed to. Assembly uses, which is churches and temples, and certain school public use districts uses such as public park, public recreation facility, municipal works, etc. It does not mention schools. In a bylaw, under the law, and I've gone through the courts on this on other issues, if it doesn't say you can do it, you can't do it. So it specifically in that clause indicates you can't build a school unless it's agreed to as a non-farm use, which they can do anytime. How this began 35 or 40 years ago is that when the ALR came in, Richmond was faced with churches as a legal use in our zoning bylaws anywhere in the ALR. So to conform with the ALR, we banned churches and temples. After the Sikh temple was built on Westminster Highway, which was a non-farm use that we took to the ALC, and they agreed. It was built on the rubble of a peat factory. The Buddhist temple on Stevenson Highway wasn't, but we took it ahead and it was approved by the ALC. We decided at that time that we're going to have a run on temples everywhere in the ALR. What are we going to do? The India Cultural Center had started an illegal temple in a house on number 5 Road. And we had the option of kicking them out and telling them you couldn't have a temple there or legalizing it. And we decided that number 5 Road would be a good idea where all these temples could go. We banned them everywhere else in Richmond. We made the house the India Cultural Center was operating in. It was a 2-story, ordinary 1950s pink and white house. And we made that legal, but for temple use only. And then we went to the Land Commission and we worked it out, and they agreed that we could put a strip all along number 5 Road for all the churches and temples for temple use, but not for schools. In other words, only for certain school public use district uses, which did not include a school. And what was agreed to at that time, and actually really is still the law today in Richmond, if you want to have a school, you ask for a SPU zone. And you either buy an existing school that's SPU, school and public use, or you buy a property and ask to have it rezoned, school and public use. Somewhere along the line, some of the temples started putting school classrooms in their temples, and it sort of grew to the situation it's in today, when the Land Commission says, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we agreed to. And so effectively, we are now bringing in a bylaw to meet what's from the rules all along. It's nothing new, simply making it very clear that schools are not a permitted use in the Highway to Heaven area. If they want a school, it has to be now through a non-farm use and has to go through the same way that the mayor has just indicated. Come to City Council. If we like it, we send it to the Land Commission. They make the decision. And I think this clears it all up. We've got a huge gray area now for decades as somebody starts a small class in a temple, and the next thing you know, you've got 200, 300, 400 students. That was not the intention in any way, shape, or form. The same thing applies to residential uses, to apartments. We've managed to stop those from going ahead. But somewhere along the line, the schools slipped through the cracks, and we ended up with schools in some of the temples. So basically what the ALC is doing is they're closing the door and making churches and temples to go through the non-farm use method of getting a school if they wanted to build one on their site. So I think it's perfectly in order. It's actually what we agreed to in the first place.
Councillor Howe.
Yes, Your Worship. I want to bring an amendment to the motion. I want to give a grace period, grandfathering or grace period of 3 years to let some of the schools that are already having plans to expand to have the time to come up with a workable plan.
Tony, Mr. Capuccinello Irachi, wouldn't we have to refer that back to change the wording?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. So what your motion has to be is to refer it back for the adjustment to the wording to give a grace period.
So that would be my motion.
Okay. So you're wanting, let's go through the remarks and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple questions to staff. So if we don't make these changes, we can still vote against any requests for education or recreation or old folks' homes or what have you. Is that correct? We don't have to approve something because it's precluded or thought of already in the OCP.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Liu, I just want to make sure I understand the question. If council does not make changes tonight to the bylaws, is that?
Yeah, if we don't make this change, it doesn't give anybody a slam dunk to get anything through anyway.
That is correct. You would also run the risk of having a policy that's not supported by the ALC, and there's also a possibility the ALC could consider getting rid of the backlands policy altogether in the long run if we're not having our policies aligned.
Okay, and if that happens, then that means no new churches could come in, or would that have retroactive effect on any of the existing assembly locations?
Through your worship, Councillor Liu, it'd be kind of a similar framework for other assembly lands outside of the backlands that are in the ALR. There's no policy or framework for those sites for both religious assembly uses or educational uses. Those applications would be considered on their own merit, and the same would apply to the backlands if we did not have a ALC backlands policy.
Okay, so there wouldn't necessarily be any repercussions. Okay, so now just another question then. So can schools be in industrial zones? Like, could someone have a school with 200 kids in Ironwood?
Through your worship, Councillor Liu, I would actually have to double check our zoning to see. I don't believe education is an allowable use in our industrial zones. So I would have to confirm which zones education is permitted in.
Okay, so that would have to be so an existing warehouse sites. They probably don't even have enough outdoor space anyway for like a 200-person school anyway. But it seems to me we just passed some stuff on industrial zones and uses in industrial zones, and so it seemed to me that schools wasn't one of them. But I might be wrong about that. Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, either to Mr. Hopkins or to Mr. Cavacinello-Arachi, for a school, you have to have SBU zoning, as Councillor Steeves has pointed out, don't you? So, there's special considerations, everything from how many people can be in there to the provision of playgrounds, et cetera. Isn't that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. This is Anthony Capuccinello-Arachi. Unless it's identified as a permitted use, then it is not permitted.
And generally, either to you or Mr. Craig or Mr. Hopkins, in our light industrial zones, they're not going to be permitted uses, are they?
Your Worship,
go ahead.
I can confirm that education is not a permitted use in our industrial zones. There are a number of zones in the city that do allow education. However, industrial is not one of them. SBU is a old zoning moniker. That zoning was changed when the zoning bylaw was updated in 2009.
Old habits die hard. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I believe Councillor Liu asked my question. So my question was, what are the potential impacts if we do not bring our policies in line with the ALC? And can you repeat what you said? I just had some noise in the background there.
Yes, through your worship, Councillor McPhail, my response to that question was that our policy then would not be in alignment with the ALC's backlands policy. We would run the risk of potentially having the backlands policy completely rescinded. Staff went through a lot of work with the ALC staff to educate the ALC on the many great programs that the city has done on ALC land, and as one of the reasons why they decided to maintain the policy subject to these revisions.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councillor McNulty.
Sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. Interesting, the discussion, the way people are going on this, and I thank Councillor Steeves for the backup. I can recall when the Richmond Christian School was just being built, and the fathers of the day bringing in concrete through a company to get the foundation in there. And I wasn't on council at the time, but I understand the value of a complete community and the education within it. And I think this is not a popularity contest. We've got to make a decision and take the bull by the horns. That's why we're elected. We have an ALC who's brought a policy in and asked us to get together with them to make sure that we are consistent with them. And I think we need to continue on with that. I think one of the things that we have to realize, I think we need to step out of the box and understand what our job is as stewards of the lands, but also understand what the institutions are asking for. And in the general world, if you remember downtown on Minaroo, people asked for free zoning. People asked to get in there not knowing what that development would be like, but they asked for free zoning, and we turned that down. Basically, what I hear the institutions ask, which they talk about fairness, but they're asking us to be unfair, to pre-zone their property ahead of time, not knowing what they're going to build or you do. And I would not rely back, even if it was suggested on the OCP. I judge everything as it comes forward. I do not make up my mind until I vote. Okay, I don't prejudge things, but it was suggested tonight that we might. I was surprised. I don't think we can grandfather. I don't think we should do it. Everybody has the right to come forward and develop their land, and if the proposal is there, and justify it. In the same way you can build a house on farmland if you can justify it and you follow certain rules, etc. We didn't shut that off either. Expansions along Number 5 Road, from what I heard tonight, are not all going to be the same. There are going to be difference. They're going to come in at different times. And even the suggestion that Councillor Howe tries to put forward, we're going to delay for 3 years, that means there will be no development for 3 years. And if a group wants to come and buy a piece of land to build a temple, are we going to hold them up for 3 years? Or if somebody wants to put a good proposal together for a school, are we going to hold them up? I don't think we should delay it. People can apply on their merit. The council of the day, who was ever at that table, hopefully will have independent thinking. And as a result, whatever the decision is made, as you alluded to, Your Worship, they have, if the proposal's correct and right, and the council feels it's a good idea, then I would see a positive result. Or if it is not, it would be a negative result. So I think we should go ahead with this. I don't think the institution should feel threatened in any way if they have a good proposal. And the biggest proposal, I know some of them, are going to go up and go a second or third story possibly, as opposed to go out. Because most of the institutions do not have, other than to get into the farmland, do not have the space to expand linearly. But they do have the opportunity to expand vertically, and those kinds of things that we consider. So I would suggest that we continue on, Your Worship. I understand that there is technically one small piece of information not in our file. However, most of us have enough background to deal with the issue tonight, and I think we should go forward. And those that want to expand, get their proposals together and bring it forward to planning. And let's get on with it. To delay this doesn't do us any good whatsoever, because we've not done it in the commercial industrial area. We've not done it in the housing area, etc. So I think it's time to move forward. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I can certainly understand why the religious institutions are in a crossroads right now. But if we refer to attachment 3, which is our summary of responses received from the Number 5 Road Backlands property owners, the only school that's really come forward is Blundell Road Cornerstone, which is 12011. I recall going to a presentation where they actually had plans and were moving forward with funding. The Muslim school is already really big, which is the 12300 Blundell, and they haven't got any plans on record to move forward. Moving down the list, the Shia Muslim, they had plans in 2016. It's now 2021, but nothing has come forward. It's been halted. The Richmond Day School, no plans on record. So I'm not too concerned about that one. The Catholic Independent Schools in Vancouver, which is 9360 Number 5 Road, they haven't got a building on the property at this point. 9500 Number 5 Road is the Komodo Holdings. Again, nothing there. Lingyan, well, they've already got classrooms inside the existing temple. So, and really, they haven't brought any plans forward, certainly to deal with that one. And then the last one is Richmond Christian. Well, it points out on the list that the site ownership has not been secured. So there may be the desire to build a school, but no one's acted on it. And if they haven't acted on it by now, you have to wonder why. Now, Mr. Lipton pointed out that he's confused that, how do we even know that we have to do this? So we have two separate memos, one from the ALC, here we are here, sorry, the Shannon Lambie, who's the regional planner, who specifically says no, education and private clubs are not permitted. And then we have another memo from Jennifer Dason, who's the chair of the ALC, and she once again states that on page 97 that the city is asked to update their assembly and institutional zoning to limit the uses on the backlands. The intent of the original policy was to support religious assembly, i.e. places of worship, not to permit residential and education activities. So, as Councillor Steeves pointed out, this was never the intention. How they slipped in it is still a mystery to me. Now, there's nothing to stop all of these organizations from asking for special approval, and that has been gone over in detail by Mayor Brody, exactly how that would work. We have to follow the rules of the Agricultural Land Commission. We really don't have a choice. We could just decide to allow circuses there, but they're going to say no when it gets to their board, to their chair, to their regional planners. So I really don't think that we have any choice. And when it comes to grandfathering for 1 year, well, anyone who's already got the plans in place, well, we can work with those. But for the ones who are just looking to the future and disappointed, what have we learned during COVID-19? Distance learning works. Students are thriving. What have we learned with other schools? They often have a satellite operation in another location. So maybe if they want so bad to have educational purposes, then they're going to have to get creative and find ways to make that work. And we have farm schools. We have the school on Stevenson Highway and Shell Road that's all about green living and green learning. There are schools that the school district has shut down that could be purchased by some of these organizations. There are lots of buildings that could be repurposed for schools, and we've seen that. There's a school going in at the Aberdeen Mall. There's a university going in at Lansdowne Shopping Center. So it can be done. It just can't be done there. So I think I asked the organizations to look outside the box, find creative ways to get what you need. And we have to follow the rules. And the province is big brother. We have to follow them. So I am going to support this. I'm not going to support sending it back. All it does is put more salt in the wound. I think it's time to step up and follow the Agricultural Land Commission directive. Thank you.
All right, so the motion that's on the floor is the number one, the second and third reading of that bylaw. Councillor Howe, you wanted to make a referral motion?
Yes, I still want to make a referral motion.
Okay, tell us the referral motion.
The referral motion is to amend the text so that we can allow a grace period of 3 years for applications that are in preparation.
All right, is that seconded? It is not seconded. So we'll call the question on number one. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with Councillor Howe opposed. Then on the second and third reading, 8500 bylaw 10259. Someone want to move it?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Then
Move adoption of
adoption.
10258.
Okay, that's moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And the
Move
final
adoption
one,
of 259.
moved and seconded. More discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone want to move adjournment?
Move adjournment.
Thank you. We are now.